What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Cyclonic Thrift channel. This week we're back again looking at some new cards from the new Outlaws of Thunder Junction set. And the commander we'll be looking at today is Gisa, the Hellraiser. 3 and 2 black for a 4/4 legendary creature human warlock. Has ward, as you know, half the creatures do now. And the ward is paying 2 mana and paying 2 life. Skeletons and zombies you control get +1/+1 and have menace. So right off the bat, you can kind of see where the deck is going to go. We're looking for skeleton, zombie typal. We're looking to pump them up, give them evasion, get in for damage. We're going to kind of overrun our opponents with a massive zombie army. But then our second ability, which is much more specific to the Outlaw of Thunder Junction, is whenever you commit a crime, create 2 tapped 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature tokens. This ability triggers only once each turn. And alright, so there's a couple things to talk about here. So one, the definition of committing a crime. So committing a crime is targeting an opponent, anything an opponent controls, and or cards in their graveyard. That's considered a crime. So anything that destroys target creature of an opponent is a crime. Anything that exiles a card from the graveyard of your opponent is a crime. If you target your opponent and make them draw cards, that's also considered a crime somehow. But whenever we do this, for the first time each turn, we create 2 tapped 2/2 zombie creature tokens, which is kind of insane, actually, considering the how cheap some of these targeted cards can be. To be able to create 4 power on 2 bodies off of that each turn is kind of insane. So you might be able to tell the big direction that this deck is going is 1, lots of skeletons, lots of zombies, and 2, a lot of instant speed, cheap crimes. Things that are considered committing a crime that we'll be able to cast on each of our opponent's turns, so that by the time we get back to us, we've created 8 2/2 zombies and are able to smash face with them. Yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. First card here is White of Precinct 6, 1 and a black for a 1/1 creature zombie. Really just in here for the zombie typal. It gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your opponent's graveyards. Not really running a big mill strategy, because honestly, without having the blue in this deck, it's kind of hard to focus the deck around it. But just in the course of the game, this guy is going to get big, and being a zombie, it's going to be a 2/2 with menace right off the bat, so it's worth putting in the deck. Next is Accursed Horde, 3 and a black for a 3/3 creature zombie, and you can pay 1 and a black, and target attacking zombie gains indestructible until end of turn. So this is just going to be a nice kind of insurance policy, you might say. When we're attacking with all of our zombies, ultimately some of them are going to be more valuable than others, and our opponents are trying to take them out. So this is going to be a nice way to kind of ensure that they stay on the battlefield attacking where we want them to be, and we're able to get the effects off of them. And this one is Dread Horde of Invasion, 1 and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and amass a zombies 1. So essentially, we create a zombie army, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and whenever a zombie token you control with power 6 or greater attacks, it gains lifelink until end of turn. So, there's 2 ways you can kind of use this card. One is to create 1 zombie army, pump him up a ton, and get him super big. 2 is you're creating a token creature at the beginning of your upkeep. And if you don't have a zombie army, you create a new one at the beginning of your next upkeep. So if you sacrifice that token to get value on your turn, you can kind of use this card as just a continual sacrifice fodder generator here, which for this deck is what we're going to take this card in direction of. Where you have a lot of sack outlets, a lot of ways to generate value off of that, and so being able to use these creatures instead of our 2/2 zombies or bigger zombies for that is going to be really nice. And now let's just get into some easy, simple, cheap, instant speed crime cards. Cards like Cremate. It's 1 black for an instant. exile target card from a graveyard, and you draw a card. Honestly, cantrips like this in black are a little rare, but it's cheap, it's at instant speed, it's committing a crime, and it's replacing itself. It is a perfect card in this deck. Next is Foul Tongue Shriek. It's black for an instant. Target opponent loses 1 life for each attacking creature you control. You gain that much life. So the biggest effect this will have is by casting it on your turn, which still counts as committing a crime, but it doesn't necessarily have to be at instant speed. We're going to be attacking with a lot of creatures, so if we're down to a 1v1 situation, we need to kind of drain an opponent for a little bit. This is going to be super helpful doing that. But hey, if you got this and you need to cast it on an opponent's turn to get that extra crime in, to get those extra 2 zombie tokens in, you just cast this, you target an opponent, they don't lose any life, and you don't gain any life because you don't have any attacking creatures. But it's still committing a crime because you're still targeting an opponent, so it still works in that sense, even if it's not maybe the ideal situation for it. Then you've got Vindictive Lich. It's 3 and a black for a 4/1 creature zombie wizard. When it dies, you choose 1 or more. Each mode must target a different player, and that has a bunch of modes to, where you're targeting an opponent, and they have to do something dumb. So sacrificing a creature, discarding 2 cards, and losing 5 life. Yeah, I mean, you can either sacrifice this on your turn or on an opponent's turn to kind of control when and where those crimes get committed. Or you can just kind of use it as a deterrent, right? Of like, hey, if you take out this guy, then I'm just going to get some zombies out of him, so maybe leave him alone, And then speaking of those sacrifice outlets, we've got quite a few here. We're going to be generating a ton of zombies, and obviously we're going to be creating a ton of zombies, and obviously we want to use those zombies in combat to help kill our opponents. But ultimately, we're going to have more than we really know what to do with, and we're going to be able to use those zombies to help generate value and keep our engine going instead of stalling out. So a card like Vampiric Rites. It's 1 black for an enchantment. You pay 1 and a black, sacrifice a creature, gain a life, and draw a card. Super easy, super simple. You get this down early, and it's going to generate a ton of value over the course of a game. Viscera Seer. It's 1 black for a 1/1 creature vampire wizard. Sacrifice a creature, scry 1. Classic sacrifice outlet. It's free, which we love. Still gets us a little bit of value with the scrying. Yeah, this is going to be really nice. Give a ton of control over our death triggers and when our creatures get taken out. And then very similar is Woe Strider. It's 2 and a black for a 3/2 creature horror. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 0/1 white goat creature token. Not really all that important. And then you, again, sacrifice another creature and scry 1. And it has a couple other abilities where you can escape it from the graveyard. Not really too worried about that, but again, it's really just a free sacrifice outlet, going to be able to take advantage of a lot of death triggers. That brings us to the vegetable portion of the deck. For those who haven't seen the channel before, the vegetable portion is when I talk about some groups of cards that you really do need to include in your deck. Ramp, card draw, removal. You need to be filling out these categories with cards, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to keep up with some of the higher powered, higher budget decks at the table. You need to be able to consistently perform, or else you're just going to get blown out of the water every time. And so I just want to run through a few cards that fall into those categories. First of which being is Mind Stone. It's 2 mana for an artifact. You tap it to add colorless, and you pay 1 and tap it to sacrifice it and draw a card. So kind of fills two realms here. You can use it for mana ramp, use it for card draw. In mono black, there's not a ton of ramp that can go on, and so we're going to rely on a lot of these mana rocks to be able to get us ahead in terms of our mana curve. The next is Thought Vessel. It's 2 mana for an artifact. You have no maximum hand size, and you tap to add colorless. We're not really necessarily thinking that we'll get to the point where we need no maximum hand size, but it's a nice thing to have, and it's 2 mana artifact that is going to get down on turn 2 and be really nice. Then we've got Hegian Archive. It's 4 mana for an artifact. You tap it to add 2 colorless, and you can pay 2, tap it and sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. It's pretty much Mind Stone just doubled, right? It costs twice as much, it generates twice as much, costs twice as much to sacrifice, but then draws you twice as much. So it's basically Mind Stone vamped up. It's a solid card in this deck. And then in terms of card draw, this card actually, I was really intrigued. I hadn't seen it before doing research for this deck, but it's Transmigrant's Crown. 2 mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and whenever it dies, you draw a card. And then you can equip it with 2 mana or a black mana. It's not Skull Clamp. I know it's not Skull Clamp. But it is definitely the budget version of Skull Clamp, where it's super cheap to equip. In a mono black deck, it costs 1 to equip. We're going to put it on our creature, presumably put it on a zombie, make him +2/+0. He's going to be, with our commander out, he's going to be a 5/3 with Menace. So swinging for that, nice big creature. When it dies, draw a card. So when we're sacrificing creatures, we're drawing cards there. It essentially turns into pay 1 mana, draw a card when we're using it with our sacrifice abilities. So it's not Skull Clamp. Totally get that. But it is kind of the budget version of that, where we can use this equipment to get us a lot of card advantage with our sacrifice outlets. Next is Undead Augur. It's 2 black for a 2/2 creature zombie wizard. Whenever it or another zombie you control dies, you draw a card and lose a life. So again, with our sacrifice outlets, we'll be drawing a ton of cards from this. It's going to generate a ton of value over the course of a game. And then Sign in Blood, again, classic black card draw spell. It's 2 black for sorcery. Target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. Use it on yourself more often than not, but it does target player. So it can commit a crime if you need to, target your opponent. If they're down to 2 life and you want them to lose the game off that, or if you just really do need to get those creatures out and you feel like that'll help you win the game, then by all means. And then there's tons of removal in this deck. Again, committing crimes is a big part of this, and so we're going to be targeting our opponent's creatures a lot, and a lot of that in mono black will be target removal. So cards like Defile, it's 1 black for an instant. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each swamp you control. This will take out pretty much any creature that you find on the battlefield. Being in a mono black deck, we're going to have a ton of swamps out, and so this will kill whatever creature you need, gets around indestructible, all that good stuff, and will generate those 2 zombie tokens because it's committing a crime. Next is Tragic Slip. Very similar, it's 1 black for an instant. It only gives a creature -1/-1 unless a creature died this turn, in which case it gets -13/-13, which will take out pretty much any creature on the battlefield. Like I said, we've got a ton of sacrifice outlets. We can very well take out a creature of our own on whatever turn we want to cast this, and take out whatever creature we want. And Stronghold Assassin, it's 1 and 2 black for a 2/1 creature zombie assassin. You tap it to sacrifice a creature and destroy target non-black creature. So again, kind of a sacrifice outlet / targeted removal. This is going to be really helpful. It's going to be a lot useful in a lot of different situations. A nice repeatable targeted removal effect will be very nice. And we're not really worried about sacrificing creatures because, again, we're generating a ton of tokens off our commander. And that brings us to the Thrift Pick of the deck. For those who haven't seen the channel before, the Thrift Pick is maybe not necessarily the card I think is the absolute best in the deck, but it's the card that I'm most excited to play with, most excited to see the effect of, to see how it interacts with the board. And the card for this deck is Mirkwood Bats. It's 3 and a black for a 2/3 creature bat, has flying. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. So yeah, I mean, in the space, if we do this right, we have our commander out and we use our instant speed, crimes. We're going to be creating 8 tokens in a turn rotation. So we're doing 8 damage basically to each opponent, and then we use those tokens in combat, and then we sacrifice them to our sacrifice outlets to draw cards. Then our opponents are losing more life. This card will win you games. It will be a problem for your opponents. It will be a target for removal, and yeah, it's just going to have a huge impact. That brings us to the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I definitely found it very interesting to work with a zombie skeleton type deck. I really hadn't done much with that in my own personal deck making before, so it was cool to kind of explore a bunch of new cards, and to see where the new Outlaws of Thunder Junction set came into play with the committing crimes piece of this. If you can think of any cards that I missed or should have included, please let me know down in the comments. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment down below, and until next time, stay safe and stay thrifty.